Have we started? Yes, we have. Oh, hi everybody. This is Debbie Happy Cohen for another goat note. And I'm holding this up because this is like a scribble of when I have leftover paint. I just think it's fun to just scribble it on a page and then maybe use it later for something else artistic. And the other thing I've been thinking about is backgrounds. You know, I like having nice backgrounds for when I'm doing recordings and stuff. And it occurred to me that when a person has been scapegoated, especially as a child, something that happens for them is called c-ptsd, which is complex PTSD, which means it's not just like one situation where they're having post-traumatic stress. It's not like, when somebody goes to war and their friends all die during an explosion, and they have these flashbacks and so that's usually what we associate with PTSD. But sometimes when you have been somebody who has been given the dump of family emotions that the family couldn't take responsibility for, so they, made it yours, that's called false guilt and false shame. And I bring this up as a background because there's also something called a familiar, meaning when you were growing up, there was a familiar sensation that you had in your life. There was a familiar way of being and way of feeling that you had in your life. And if that background for you was a sense of false guilt and false shame, and you carried that with you, that would vibrate forward and it would create more of the same storyline in order to keep recreating that feeling, which is a background feeling. And what you want to replace the background feeling with is with empathy, honor. Honor is the opposite of shame, and so I love that. Compassion and joy. So in order to do that, that takes practice. It takes a deliberate intent. I don't really want to talk about the practice here so much. I'll give you a little insight into what I'm offering about that. But once you know what you're dealing with, you can find your own path. So this is also not a sales pitch for what I have to offer. I'm going to offer it because it might be right for some of you. But it's really hard to change something when you don't know what's going on. So if you had, if you were like the scapegoat in a family when you were growing up and you got used to being guilted or shamed, then that might, when you grow up, that might look like relationships that reflect that, or jobs that reflect that, employers that reflect that, even friendships that reflect that. Or isolating yourself and feeling really alone, which is another way of reflecting that in a sideways kind of a way, not directly feeling those horrible feelings. And you're worth it. You are really, what was dumped on you wasn't your fault. And if I really want to get philosophical, the people who were hurting you or dumping on you, we've had this problem as a society. This isn't personal. This is a societal issue. So that helps me to make sense of it. That doesn't mean I don't set very clear, healthy boundaries for myself, but it helps make sense of it without like hanging on to a ton of blame. But setting the boundaries was necessary in order to really practice that compassion, because it's hard to practice compassion when somebody keeps stepping on your toes and hurting you, whether they realize it or not. So I know I mentioned this in another video. I created a program called the Joy-Based Living Beginner's Guide. It's called the Beginner's Guide because as humanity, we are still like newbies to joy-based living. And the practices in there are designed to help you change that familiar background, transform it from, if you have a sense of false shame or false guilt, into honor and commitment and loyalty and joy, and creating a life for yourself that reflects those feelings as the background, as the backdrop of your life. You are worth it. I believe in you. You can do this. Namaste.